Hey, what's up guys? I'm Josh and this is the Xperia 1 III. This is going to be the full review. I've never reviewed a phone before, so I hope you'll take it easy on me. Let me know anywhere I could, seriously improve this if I do it again. So I think what's going to be best for me in this review is to talk about specific aspects of this phone that I feel like I have a good understanding of. Quick disclosure, Sony did lend this to me for review, and of course nobody is paying or asking me to say anything good or bad. All thoughts and opinions are my own. First off, you have the screen, which is crazy. It's a 6.5-inch 4K HDR OLED capable of 120 Hz. It's ridiculous. I believe it's technically the first phone with all those features combined. So being OLED, it comes with all the benefits and the drawbacks of being OLED. So you've got these super, rich and deep blacks. The colors are what I would consider to be properly saturated. It's actually a really wonderful looking phone, but it's also a little bit dimmer than some other phones in the market right now. That's just a drawback of OLEDs. They're not super bright. Now, I do think that all the marketing material about it being super high resolution, super vivid colors, and, really properly calibrated display, at least as far as phones go, it's actually pretty accurate. Now, the screen being, a 4K 120 Hz display needs quite a bit of monstrous hardware behind it to run it. So this has 12 gigs of RAM and a Snapdragon 888. Now, it's crispy. This phone never felt sluggish or stuttery or behind. It always felt kind of almost predictive in its movement. It feels really good. Whether you're just browsing around, scrolling through all your pictures, it's a pretty well-functioning phone. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about cameras, right? This is kind of my domain. So this has 3 focal lengths on it. It's got 16mm, 24mm, and a variable telephoto lens. These actually have some moving optics that kind of move within the phone. It's actually pretty cool stuff. This proudly features some Zeiss glass on it, and the face tracking is actually pretty excellent across both photos and videos. If you don't know, in the mirrorless space, Sony right now is like the king of face tracking. It's very good. So I think similar to every modern phone, a lot of the capability of the camera really comes down to the person using it. You can get some great results off this thing with just a little bit of composition work and some basic understanding of lighting tips. I would certainly recommend the manual mode if you know about camera settings. I don't love the auto mode on this, but I also don't love the auto mode on basically any camera. So if you can, I would shoot in manual. That's where your best results are going to come from. It's just going to take a little bit more time to capture the image. So I put this thing through some pretty intense conditions with sunlight, shadows, and you can even see some of the black paint on the motorcycle. It did fairly well for dynamic range in my opinion, especially for just a phone. Now with this, like with basically every camera on a phone right now, if you pixel peep, you'll notice kind of this weird smudging effect, this weird kind of glazed look to everything. If you pixel peep, you'll find it. But at the surface level, zoomed out, these photos generally look pretty good. Now let's talk about video. So video is pretty cool. They have HDR and they have SDR. I'm gonna put up 2 side-by-side outdoor shots of SDR and HDR. I also took another video with this thing in a really high dynamic range situation. So the bike was in shadow here, and you can see on the left side of the screen, there's this big highlight and it's a little bit blown out. And that was the sun just hitting the ground on that particular spot. So it doesn't have like cinema level of dynamic range, but it's still pretty good. And some of the standouts, of course, are still the face tracking for a phone. It's very good. And then I thought I'd do a quick comparison here between this camera, the front camera, and then the rear camera of this specific scene with this sort of lighting. So the focal length is going to be a little bit different, but it should kind of show you the lighting effects and the differences in color. This is just going to be straight out of camera for the front cam. I guess while we're doing this, we'll also do a microphone test. So this is what the microphones sound like. Okay, and then this is going to be the rear cams on this thing. And then I'm not sure if this is going to be utilizing a different microphone or not, but this is what it looks like. The selfie camera absolutely blows. It sucks, man. It's just terrible. It's got this like pre-applied beauty filter thing at all times. It doesn't look good. That's a bit of a shame. I wish it was better. The forward-facing camera, the good camera, this one was much better, but I did feel like compared to this sort of reference image, it was a little bit oversaturated, but totally usable. Maybe not for a deliverable project, obviously, but usable nonetheless. Now, one thing I did want to talk about specifically was the video of the fireworks that I just showed you. So in this video, you can see these little black kind of splotches on these fast-moving, overexposed areas of the firework. Now, I think what this is called frame filtering. And this is actually a problem that doesn't just plague this phone. It's on really bright and, more importantly, moving spots. So if you take like a static video of the sun, it's not going to have that. But if you have a really fast moving object like a firework that's really bright compared to the background, you are going to see a little bit of these black spots. Now, the audio performance in general is really good. I actually did a dedicated video talking about the 3.5mm audio specifically because that's a big push for this, and my channel is typically about audio. But the speakers in the front of this are actually pretty decent as well. This phone actually does provide a fairly decent stereo image, and you can actually tell left from right and have a kind of a center presentation too. The speakers are better than like a typical iPhone, but not as good as an iPad. Of course, the real top end of treble and the bottom end are a little bit rolled off, obviously, as every phone is. And it's mostly mid-range that you're getting, but it's pretty competent mid-range.
I'm gonna have an in-depth review of this phone as a phone, but in this specific video, I'm actually gonna be talking exclusively about the audio performance of this device. I'm gonna have an in-depth review of this phone as a phone, but in this specific video, I'm actually gonna be talking exclusively about the audio performance of this device. So
now, with all these insane features, of course, the battery life isn't gonna be the longest thing ever, but I did feel it was respectable throughout the use, and I didn't feel like the battery restrained me. Like, if I had 30%, I'd have no problem going out for the day and just using it sparingly. The battery is a 4,500 milliamp hour battery. Okay, so some bonus bullet points. You can hook up a DualShock PlayStation controller to this phone via the USB-C on the side. There is a dedicated shutter button to both launch the camera app and snap a picture on the side, and it does have a half press for focus. Pretty neat. The fast charging is actually useful. The backplate is a gigantic fingerprint magnet. Actually really annoys me. There is a toolless SD card slot for expandable storage on the left side. And of course, there are tons of other things, but I think I'll just leave it here. Now, I do think that what's interesting about this phone is that you can be an enthusiast in several different ways and still probably want to consider this phone. Let me lay out a couple of examples here. If you're really into audio, this is a pretty cool phone. Like, it's got a great DAC in it. The amplifier is not the strongest, but it sounds really good. So if you're an audiophile, this is an appealing option in kind of a dying breed of phones that have 3.5mm, especially with other features that are actually really good and kind of industry leading even. If you're a camera enthusiast, this actually has a really good camera. And like every camera, it's really going to depend on your capability as a shooter to make things look good. If you're a screen fan of 4K OLEDs in a 21:9 format like this thing has, then this is going to be an appealing option. Or if you're just a general phone nerd and you like phones that have cool features. Now, the question is, how much of an enthusiast for those specific features are you? Because if you really like cameras and audio, but you don't care about the 4K OLED thing, or you really like the screen, but you don't care about the audio and you don't really use your camera that often, it's about how much you're willing to pay for the features that you really care about. So the price for this thing right now is $1,300. So it's on the expensive end of phones. Now, my objective opinion on this, I think because it's got so many good features all slammed into one package, it is a little pricey, but if you want a phone like this, there aren't too many options out there. So if you desire the features that this has, the price tag is going to be a bullet you're going to have to swallow. Okay, guys, thanks a lot for watching. Till the next video, my name's Josh, signing off. Peace.